Hello out there. This is Kelly with Gia's Italian Kitchen. Welcome to our episode. We're going to make ratatouille with fennel and tomatoes. So this is a classic dish that my grandma used to make. I've added fennel to it, and then we're going to put a pork chop in there to add some protein. So you can certainly leave out either of those if you don't like those, or if you are vegetarian. This is a great dish. You can put over pasta or polenta or rice and leave out the meat. Your choice. So Gia's Italian Kitchen connects people together through Italian food. So think about friends and family that you have across the country that maybe you can't travel to and you'd like to. We can connect you. We connect you through a private dinner party, Italian style. So let's get into it tonight. We are going to start with the pork chops. So I have a very large saucepan. And hopefully you got the grocery list and the equipment list that I posted in all the social media. So hopefully you have that. So I have this huge saucepan that has nice big sides because we are going to get, the tomatoes, and there'll be definitely a sauce, like a juicy sauce in there. So you want something that's not going to spill over. And then mine has a large top to it. So if you don't have a big top, because we do need to cook this at the end, you can use a large cookie sheet. So I'm going to get this going on a low to medium heat. Well, no, like a medium heat. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a few tablespoons of olive oil, and then we're going to sear the pork chops and then take them off and then move into the vegetables. So grab your pork chops. I'm going to grab mine and just open these up. So I use the bone-in pork chops. You can use the boneless if you want. I just think, if you've watched any of our past episodes, like when we do chicken, I always do the bone-in because it adds more flavor and it tends to prevent the meat from drying out. So that's why I like doing the bone-in. And they just look super cool. So I have these big bone-in pork chops. These are huge. Those are amazing. And they're nice and thick. We're in Iowa, so they're nice big Iowa chops. These are not going to dry out. We're going to sear them, and then they're going to cook in the tomato sauce with all the other vegetables, and they're going to be amazing. So I'm going to bring these back over here. I've got my olive oil, and so I was reading on, I forget what media it was, but one of the dirtiest things in your kitchen is your spice rack. So I just thought of that when I grabbed the olive oil, because my left hand just touched the raw meat. So if you just touched your raw meat, either wash your hands with soap or do not touch the other stuff. So like when you go to grab your spices or your wine glass, cheers, we're pairing this with a nice Chianti tonight. Be aware of what you just touched so that you don't contaminate your kitchen and get sick and get other people sick. So I'm not going to touch this with my left hand because I just touched the pork chop, and then I'm going to wash my hands after I put the pork chops in. So I'm putting enough to coat the bottom of the pan, but we're obviously not frying them, so you don't need much. I poured in probably about 3 tablespoons. And then I'm going to get this so it coats the bottom of the pan. And you don't want it too high. Olive oil is not a high temperature oil, so probably just about that medium heat. And then I'm going to just go ahead and put these in because that heat should heat up pretty fast if you have a gas stove. So I think I put 4 to 6 of these. So hopefully if you have that really big pan, you can fit all these in your pan. So you want it in one layer. You don't want them to be stacked. They can certainly touch, but they should all fit without having to be overlapped. Okay, so let's throw this away and now wash hands. Hang on. I feel like I'm pretty mindful of that, of like the not touching stuff, but I can see how if you're making if you're making something and you're touching the food and then you're grabbing your spices, that you would just like grab the pork chop and grab the spices and not even think about it. So that's so gross. So yeah, just something to think about. Okay. Next, we're going to pull together the vegetables. So think about a classic ratatouille. Maybe you've seen the movie, which is, I think, French. But, I mean, this is a classic Italian meal also, where we've got the eggplant, we've got zucchinis, we've got onion and garlic, and then this huge thing over here. You can kind of see this. I don't know how I found this big of a fennel bulb, but I found this big of a fennel bulb. It's amazing. So it tastes like anise, which is kind of the black licorice flavor, but it's a nice crunchy like a celery. And then we're going to go about halfway up cutting that, and it adds an amazing flavor to the ratatouille, or really to any stir fry, or later, maybe next month, we're going to do a fennel salad with a vinaigrette and some oranges, and that's also lovely. So be on the lookout for that. So to start, we're going to have one large onion, and we're going to cut this up. So when we take, what we're going to do is sear those pork chops and then actually take them out of there so that we can do the vegetables. So watch your fingers, and I've just got my bowl over here so I can compost my vegetables. And then we'll dice this up. So the pork chops, probably about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we're going to flip them so that each side can get seared, which is really just going to help to hold the juices in so that they stay more moist once we cook those. So I'm going to give this a nice slice, and then we'll dice them up. So there's this kitchen in Independence that I want to give a shout out to, the Brick Kitchen, to those folks. I don't know if they're watching tonight, but if they are, we are so happy to have met you. And they have, I just thought of it because they have a safety knife class. And I feel like I need to take that on how to cut and not cut your finger off. So if you're anywhere in the Midwest, that might be a good class to look for. All right. Let's see. I think we're probably, let me go check the pork chops after I do this. Because the pork chops are going to cook in the tomatoes and all the vegetables after we get all this pulled together. So we're not really trying to cook the tomatoes at this point. Or I mean the pork chops. But we do want to look, they should be getting a little brown. So I'm going to turn mine up just a little bit so that we can get that seared. So you should be hearing like a little crackle of the olive oil, and then that'll help the pork chops. Okay, so let's cut the rest of this up. Oops. And then we'll just give that a rough dice. So my onion's also very large. So if you want, you could use 2. If you've got kind of a smaller medium onion, you could use 2. This is going to add a little more body to the sauce, but that fennel is probably going to overtake the flavor of the onion. So if you only have 1 small onion, it's fine. No worries there. Okay, so what we're going to do is put our onion in a bowl so that we can keep chopping while those pork chops are doing their thing. So hopefully, since you've made it to our YouTube channel, you've had a chance to look at some of the other episodes. But YouTube is like an awesome library for all of our videos. So I think we have over 60 or 70 videos in the YouTube channel, which is like awesome. And they're all free to look at. So if you have time, take a look at that. You can make many beautiful dinners with those videos in there. And some of them have the ingredients, the grocery lists in there, but if they don't, you can email us at kelly@giasitaliankitchen.biz, B-I-Z, and we'd be happy to send you the grocery list and the equipment list like we did tonight so that you are fully prepared for making that dish. So let's check those pork chops. Oh, see, okay, mine is starting to, yep, okay. So I'm gonna flip mine. So they should be kind of, getting a little gray, maybe a little bit brown. Probably not too much brown yet. Okay, then we'll let those go for another 3-4 minutes on the other side. Meanwhile, the next thing we're going to cut up is garlic. So I have my garlic pre-chopped. So this is one of my tricks to save you time during your work week. So if you have not already chopped your garlic, de-shuck those, take the skins off, and then you can take a knife or a Cuisinart and just chop them. But you can take the knife and kind of go like that to smash it, and then dice them. I'm echoing. But this is an awesome trick because what I do, you can get these like at a big box store or your local grocer and get a big bag of the garlic. And you can even get them pre-shucked so you don't have to take the skins off yourself. And then I put them in my little Cuisinart, chop all the garlic up at one time, put them in a jar, cover it with olive oil, and then you have garlic ready to go, and you don't have to do all the shucking and dicing every time. So you like a stir fry, Italian, whatever you're making, I start almost everything with garlic. So this is done for me now. So I'm going to just set this aside over by my onions because those will be the first two things going in that pot when we take the pork chops out. So let's just get some of the rest of this chopped. So we're going to go next will be the fennel. Look at this. Isn't this amazing? Oh my gosh. So we've washed all these, but since this is kind of like this is a root, isn't it? Where it's like kind of underground, right? So even though I've rinsed it, I always take the first layer off, like an onion. I always take that first layer off because there's always crap in there. So we're going to take, the bottom, like a celery thing, take that off. And that goes to compost. And then I'm going to do this kind of in two parts. So I'm going to cut off the white so that I can get some of my white, like one layer off. That's a big layer. You know what? I'm going to just rinse that off because that's like half the bowl. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's amazing. I don't want to throw that whole thing out. I'm going to just rinse this off again. And just make sure I don't have a bunch of dirt on there. Okay, then the green part kind of has two parts to it. It has the leafy stuff, and then it's got the stalks like a celery. I like to use both. Are you guys cool with that if I use the leaf? I love the leaves. They have a lot of flavor, and they just add more color to the dish. So I like to include those. So I'm going to cut those up first and get another bowl to put the fennel in. So I'm going to cut these from the green stalks about halfway up. So I'm slicing them, and then I'm going to give them also a rough chop because I would like these to be kind of small. It's really up to you. I mean, they're just crunchy vegetables in your ratatouille, so you can have them really whatever bite, but you want kind of a bite size. So I'm about halfway up, so I'm going to just put that over there. And then at the end of it, where it's kind of a larger, I'm just going to give this, watch your fingers, just give this a rough chop to get these a little smaller. Can you smell that? You should be able to start, if you're doing the fennel, you should be able to start smelling that gorgeous flavor as you're cutting these. Okay. Then let's get these in the bowl. And I can hear my pork chop, so I'm going to go check on side 2 of those pork chops. Oh yeah, okay. I think that was about 3-4 minutes. So I'm gonna turn my stove down to like a low medium, and then we're gonna take the pork chops out and just put them on a platter so that they can rest and hang out there for a while we pull the rest of this together. And we're gonna leave the olive oil in there, and if there's any bits of your pork chops that are in there, that's wonderful. We're leaving those in there too. Because another cool thing about this dish is it's one pan. Like, this is all we're using. So it's also kind of nice for a quick dinner or a weeknight dinner because you're not totally making a mess of your kitchen. So what we're going to do is throw those onions in there now. Oh, you can hear those. Okay, so we're on kind of low, medium heat so that we can get those onions cooked. So I'm going to stir those in the olive oil. There should be enough in there still to coat the onions. We're going to wait a couple minutes before we put the garlic in because I don't want the garlic to get sweet. The longer you cook the garlic, the sweeter it gets, and I don't want it sweet. I want it to taste like the garlic. So I'm going to wait on those. So let's go back to our fennel while the onions are cooking. This is a huge bowl. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to just cut this like an onion, I guess, and turn it over and dice it up. Slice and then dice. Oh, it smells so good. So our private group class that I mentioned earlier in the evening is it's an Italian dinner party that we can do in person, we can do it virtually, or we can do a combination. So if you have like friends in New York and family in California, and maybe you're in Chicago, and maybe you're in Iowa, we can do a combination of that, or everyone's virtual. You know, I've done those too. And you get to pick the menu, you get to pick your guests, and you have a beautiful dinner party where everyone's video's on. So right now, this is kind of a one-way, I'm coming to you, but in the private group class, you get to have everyone's video and audio on. So it's really like you're just chatting with your friends, and then I'm helping kind of move along so that at the end of the night, everyone has a beautiful Italian dinner. So if you think that that might be something that is interesting to you, you can go to our website, giasitaliankitchen.biz, B-I-Z, and all of our products are in there. You can go to the shop and check out more details on that private group class. And if you have questions, you can email us. We'd be happy to answer those. But that is a really fun, it's a fun, like a birthday gift or a holiday gift for your friends and family that you just don't get to see, that you'd like to see more often. So that's fun. Okay, let's finish this. Woo, it's a lot of fennel. You like fennel, right? So if you're new tonight, thank you so much for joining. I'm talking to some pit crew members off to the side. I always have friends and family helping me on the side because this is kind of a team effort, right? Can't do this on my own. So got to make sure everyone likes what we're making. Okay, so I'm just going to put the fennel over here in this big bowl. So hopefully you're kind of eyeballing how much you're cutting versus how big your pan is. My pan is very big. As you put things in there, like this is a lot of fennel, but it's going to reduce down a little bit as it cooks. But hopefully you still have plenty of room in your pan. So I'm just going to give this a stir. And then let's go ahead and add, so for the garlic, maybe, 4 to 6 to 8. I love garlic. So like I'm going on the 8 cloves, which is going to be about 3 big heaping tablespoons of my pre-diced garlic. And then we'll give that a mix. And let that saute. Okay, next. And I'm going to just use the same cutting board because the meat never touched the cutting board. So it didn't touch my knife. So I'm just going to keep moving along here with the vegetables. So next we're going to cut the eggplant. I'm just cutting the ends off. The eggplant, they have like tiny seeds, but really you can eat the whole eggplant. It's not like a squash where you've got seeds in the end and you need to, spoon those out. We can really use the whole thing. So for an eggplant, it depends on what you're making, but sometimes you don't want to eat the skin, but we're going to dice this up. So we're going to keep the skin on because if we take the skin off, the eggplant's going to fall apart when we put it in the pot. So we're going to keep the skin on. It is going to get nice and soft and it'll be lovely to eat. If you have experienced that tough skin before on an eggplant, it's probably because they weren't cooked enough. Or maybe if you have a big round like that, sometimes they can be tough if you don't get them cooked enough. So they will be plenty cooked because they're going to simmer in with those tomatoes. So we're just going to cut these into rounds, maybe about a 1/2 inch thick, and then I'm just going to dice these up. So you could make this even like a vegan dish by excluding the meat. And we actually are not adding cheese to this like you would add to a lot of Italian dishes. There are so many flavors in this, you really don't even need the cheese. So, if you think of preconceived notions of, Italian food is so heavy and, it really is a light dish with so many healthy vegetables in it. And of course the tomatoes, which are very heart healthy. All right. So we're just going to throw this into another bowl. And that was a pretty big eggplant, actually. Okay, I'm going to cut up the other one. I don't know from when I might end up using like 1.5 eggplants. Depends on how big your eggplant is. It's kind of hard right now because right now it's January and you might be getting mixed quality of vegetables at your local grocer. So if you have a tiny one, I would go for the 2. I was fortunate to find rather good size eggplants. So I'm probably not going to use all of this because I am probably then going to run out of room in my pan. But we'll cut them up. Because once you have them cut up, you know what? If you don't use them all, you can stick them in a Ziploc, stick them in the fridge, and add them to, a soup or a sauce or a stir fry later in the week. So if you have it, cut it up, and then you're done with that part for later. All right. And then we're going to go back to those onions and give that a check. So the spices we're going to also grab to add to this. We're going to do oregano. And ironically, we're not going to do basil. A lot of Italian dishes call for basil, but a lot of dishes call for oregano, which is a wonderful spice that is quite different than basil. So that is what we're using tonight, as well as, are we using red pepper? Oh, no, we're not doing red pepper. Okay, that's okay. You also need wine. So like I said, we paired this with Chianti. That's optional. If you don't want to add it, you don't have to. But when you cook it, the alcohol cooks off. So if you don't want the alcohol, you could still add that for flavor, and you still will not be doing the alcohol. I'm going to just take a little sip here. And I'm doing a lot of talking. Okay, let's give this another stir. So you should see those onions starting to soften, and your kitchen should be starting to smell amazing from the onions and the garlic. Okay, so now let's add in the fennel, because the fennel, like I said, is kind of like a celery. It needs to saute also and get soft. So let's add Oh, this is going to be wonderful. And give that a stir. So if your pan is looking a little dry, depending on how much you put in with the pork chops, you could add another tablespoon of olive oil. I have plenty in here to kind of coat as I'm turning the onions and the fennel. So I think I'm fine with that. Okay, next we're going to cut up the zucchini. So I've got 2 zucchinis here, and we're kind of going to do the same thing as we did for the eggplant. We're going to slice them, skin on, and these are going to cook down, and they'll be super soft by the time we get to dinner. And watch your fingers at the end there. All right. And then we're going to take these rounds, and I'm just going to kind of stack them up and cut them into 4s, because mine is not too big. So then they're, just bite-sized pieces. So whatever size zucchini that you have, you're cutting them maybe in half if they're really skinny, or you can cut them in quarters if they're kind of big. And there goes the ice maker, if you heard that hissing sound that sounds like a cat. That always seems to go off during cooking class. Okay. And again, if you had kind of tiny zucchinis, you could go for 3. If they were smaller, mine were pretty decent size for zucchini, so I'm just sticking with the 2. Okay, almost done with these. Ooh, that's a big stack. All right. Okay, so we've got the onion, the garlic. Let's get the oregano in there. So I have dried oregano. If you have fresh, great. My oregano plant is struggling to stay alive this winter. So I'm going to go with the dried because I don't want to cut my plant off for winter. So I pulled in, we're going to do an episode in the spring on planting the herbs and what herbs can you leave outside? What do you need to bring in and redo every year? But the oregano is one that you can bring in. So I brought it in from my garden and I'm trying to keep it alive. It's barely staying alive right now. So, okay, so we're going to add, I think, a tablespoon. Yeah, a big tablespoon of the dried oregano. And then let's give that a stir. Oh, you should smell that right away as the oregano hits the heat. Yum. So when we were in Italy most recently this past summer, it was actually kind of surprising how often they use oregano. When you think of Italian cooking, you always think of the basil. And of course they use basil, but they use oregano a lot more than I remembered. And I have really come to love it and use it more often in more of my dishes because it is just a lovely, lovely herb. Okay, so next we have the tomatoes. So we're doing 2 different kinds of tomatoes. We're doing some canned tomatoes and some fresh tomatoes. And I don't use a whole lot of canned anything, but when it comes to crushed tomatoes, sometimes the cans are just the best, especially if depending on where you live or it's winter, you just can't get a whole lot of fresh tomatoes. So the canned tomatoes, they're really a pretty good option. One thing to note on canned tomatoes, though, whatever you're making, you need to allocate at least 20 to 30 minutes to saute and get the flavor of the can out of the tomato. So that's kind of the trick. You can't really make a good tomato dish quickly if you're using the canned tomatoes. You need, if you have an hour, great, but at least 20 to 30 minutes to get rid of that kind of aluminum flavor. So we're going to, I have 2 of these crushed tomatoes. So you want to use good ones. Don't, the San Marzanos, or whatever you can find. But the key to what you're buying in those canned tomatoes, look on the back of the ingredients. You do not want added sugar. You don't want added anything else, pretty much. It should be like tomatoes, maybe some water, some added salt. That's it. One, it's going to change the flavor of whatever dish you're making, but two, you definitely do not need the sugar. Italians do not add sugar to a lot of things. Americans add sugar to a lot of things. So look on the back of that can. Then we're going to use fresh tomatoes. So I bought 2 pints of fresh grape tomatoes. Let me grab. So I'm going to use a serrated knife for this because these are a little easier to cut. And we're just going to cut these all in half so that they open up. But I don't want to cut them like super small because then they'll just kind of squish and disintegrate once we get in there. So I'm just going to cut them in half so that they add kind of a chunk to the dish without falling apart. Okay, and I'm listening to the onions sizzle. So let's go back there and give those a stir. Oh, yeah, you can really smell the fennel and the oregano. Oh my, yum. So just stir that up, and we're gonna let that simmer for a few more minutes to let the fennel soften up a little bit more. That one doesn't look very good. So the other ingredients that you will need if you don't have everything out from your grocery list, the red wine, and tomato paste. So I use tomato paste in a tube. I love this stuff, and some fresh parsley. Are we doing parsley? No. I think that was for the fennel salad that I was going to make. Okay, we're setting this aside. No parsley. What was I saying? Oh, the tomato paste. So the tomato paste is, I'm going to eyeball this. And I know that that's like a terrible thing for a recipe is to say eyeball, but you want to kind of use the tomato paste to thicken up the sauce. So we're going to see how watery this gets when we add stuff and add some paste maybe. I will probably add 1 tablespoon just because it does have a really thick, rich tomato, beautiful flavor. And I do want that, but I don't want to add too much because I don't want the whole dish to turn out pasty. I do still want it to have a sauce because we need those pork chops to cook and have some juices in the pan still. All right. So I'm going to pause on that for a minute. Next, we need to get the eggplant and the zucchini into the pot. So add some of those. And we're going to stir those up. And get those to warm up and start to soften. So I did put in the equipment list a stock pot, which is over here with water. So my kids always want pasta. They love this ratatouille over pasta. So if you want, you can start your water boiling, or you can, like I said, do it over rice or polenta, which is we'll make polenta another night. That's a whole different deal. But the pasta is easy if you want to add some starch to your dish, or the kids want something over there. So if you want that, you can start that. So in your saucepan, again, give an eyeball to the saucepan. You may need to add, I'm going to add just another tablespoon of olive oil. Now that we've added the eggplant and the zucchini, they're really going to start to absorb the liquid that's in there. So I don't want my bottom of my pan to get dry. So I'm going to add just about a heaping tablespoon of olive oil and give this another stir. Okay, and then we'll finish cutting up the tomatoes. And then we'll be getting close to pulling this together. I'm going to cut up a few more of these. So if you don't have your wine open, if you're doing that, why don't you open your wine? And then I think, yeah, we're almost there, guys. You will need to allocate another at least 20 minutes for those pork chops to cook. So we need the pork chops to cook. We need the tomatoes to cook down. So you're not quite ready to eat, but you're almost done cooking. You're almost done making the dish. And then the easy part is just let it simmer on your stove. I love these. These little yellow tomatoes they're kind of orange almost. So I'm going to pick those out because they're cute. You know, I've got some yucky ones in there too, but you know what? It's January, so I guess, what do you expect? Okay. Got those. Let's give this a toss. So the eggplant and the zucchini don't really need to cook for very long because they're going to really cook once the tomato stuff is in there. They don't need to saute like the onions and the fennel do. So let's go ahead and add the tomatoes. So I'm going to add my 2 cans of sauce, or actually of the crushed tomatoes. And I'm going to add all of these chopped tomatoes that we did, these beautiful red and orange, yellow tomatoes. And then give this a stir. Carefully, now your pan should be getting very, very full. And then we're going to gotta grab the wine. Oh, thank you. Okay, so we're going to add about 1/4 of a cup to 1/2 cup of red wine. And I always say, you would never cook with a wine that you wouldn't drink. So don't put the crappy wine in your dish, right? You want your dish to be amazing, like you're drinking it. So put the good wine in there. You're only putting 1/2 cup. And then I'm going to put my 1 tablespoon of the tomato paste. And I'm putting the tomato paste right where I put the wine because I'm going to kind of stir that to break it down in the pan. Oh, yeah, sorry, this is like a tube of toothpaste. I gotta squeeze it out because I do use tomato paste a lot. I love it. So I'm gonna stir the tomato paste with the wine, or maybe if there's a little bit of liquid in your pan, just to get it loosened up a little bit. Then stir into your whole pan. Oh yes. Okay, so after you're totally stirred, let me bring this over and show you guys my pan. There is my pan. We've got the eggplant, the zucchini, the onions, the fennel, the tomatoes. You can see the wine. You can see the tomato paste still because it hasn't cooked in there yet. Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to put this back on the stove. The next thing we're going to do is just take those pork chops and kind of nestle them back into the pan so that they can cook. So we're going to take the pork chops, put them in the top, and then kind of move them around a little bit so that they can get down into that sauce. And then you need your cover, and we're going to keep this on about low medium. Once it starts simmering, I would maybe turn it down a tad, but if you've got a good amount of liquid in there, you should be fine to leave it on the low to medium. I'm going to leave mine on about medium right now for a few minutes so that everything can come and warm up. So then once it starts simmering, 20 minutes, and you're ready for dinner. So that is the ratatouille with the pork chops and fennels and tomatoes, and it's going to be delicious. I hope your kitchen sounds amazing. If you have enjoyed this episode, please do check out our website, giaitaliankitchen.biz, B-I-Z, and again, email Kelly at giaitaliankitchen.biz if you have any questions. We'd be happy to answer your questions. and you're in the YouTube. So check out some of those other videos. There's some beautiful dinner. We made before the holidays, we made a homemade risotto with butternut squash and lobster. Check that episode out with Badger Keegan, our friend. He is a musician from the West Coast and the East Coast. That was a super fun episode. So that should be pretty down, just a little bit down in the scrolling. Check that out. And the other thing that we can offer is any of where you work, your companies. We do team building events. So we can do cooking classes for your team building for work. So if you have any interest in that, there is an option in the JesusItalianKitchen.biz/shop, SHOP, where you can find out more details. But if you are looking for some fun team building activities, we can help you there. We've done from 10 people to 100 people in a team building event. Part live, part virtual, or all virtual. Lots of options there. So thanks for joining. I hope your dinner turns out amazing. And have a great night. Let's get cooking. Bye-bye. Out.